Welcome to NCPD Live, rooted in gospel values that affirm the dignity of every person. The National Catholic Partnership on Disability works collaboratively to ensure meaningful participation of people with disabilities in all aspects of the life of the church and society. I'm Charlene Katra, Executive Director of NCPD, and we're delighted to have with us today Jill Reffett, who's the Executive Director of Embrace. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on.
We're glad to have you on. We look forward to a conversation with you, but we're going to begin, as always, with a prayer. And for our topic today, especially on inclusive Catholic education and family life, I think as well, we wanted to start with this prayer for awareness, okay, from a past Inclusion Awareness Day. And the prayer was really, we give credit to Pathways for offering this prayer. If you'll join me, I'll go ahead and lead us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. God, creator of all, help us to recognize that each of us has abilities and each of us has limitations. And yet we all have a part to play in bringing about your kingdom. You love each of us profoundly. In the spirit of gratitude and solidarity, we ask you to increase our awareness of both the gifts and the needs of those around us. Open our hearts, minds, and doors to the gifts of every person. Help us to become truly welcoming communities where everyone can find a place at your table. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Well, again, I say to you, welcome, Jill. We're delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you.
We've highlighted your family, I know, on occasions already on our website. And I think a lot of other people, probably like many of those listening today, have really enjoyed getting to know you and your family. So this is just one more layer and level for them to do that. So let's just get started.
Awareness. Thank you. We appreciate you highlighting the importance of this topic and carrying the torch for so many of us.
Absolutely. Well, we do it together, and we know we can do more together, as they always say. So start by telling us a little bit about yourself and about your family, please.
So my name is Jill Reffett, and my husband, Chris Reffett, is a Catholic school principal in Lawrence, Kansas. I have 3 little girls. They are, let's see, everybody just changed birthdays. So they are 10, 11, and 12. And my oldest has Down syndrome and a dual diagnosis of autism, and my youngest has Down syndrome, and she's adopted, so it has a variety of other things that come along with that as well.
Okay. Very good. I understand. And that's one thing, I guess, of what I know of you is, besides being a mom and loving your own family, you're a very strong advocate. And so, again, nice to partner with you and finally meet you directly myself, even since I'm kind of new up here in this area. But you have ended up as Executive Director of Embrace. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to that? Maybe a little bit of your journey, how God led you to that?
Right. So our girls were included in a Catholic school in Quincy, Illinois. And in the midst of that, I really should back up. We actually started our journey with my oldest in a public school. And we went to the we went to the NDSC conference probably about 7 years ago. That probably is 7 or 8 years ago. And we were really in this place where we were seeking. We were not, we felt like that's the place we had to be because our daughter had Down syndrome, that public school was the only option. And there was this session being offered, and it was about inclusion of kids with Down syndrome in our Catholic schools. And I was like, what? We have to go to this. And really still thinking this was a pipe dream, right? So Beth Foraker and Lynn Heyer of FIRE. So Beth Foraker of National Catholic Board on Full Inclusion and Lynn Heyer from FIRE, the FIRE Foundation, were presenting this session. And they had a multitude of families from across the country who were within this advocacy movement and working for inclusion. And all these folks we started to know, Dr. Michael Boyle from Loyola. And there's just this fire that started to be ignited. So we started Rayleigh out in the Catholic school. My mom went as her volunteer paraeducator, and we just what started out as kind of fear, if you will, their fear turned into just this beautiful experience for everybody. So we ultimately started a fire affiliate there in the Illinois area. And that a couple of years later, at that point, Mila was home. Mila had started at the Catholic school. All of our girls were there. My husband actually left his job as a public school principal and went to the Catholic school, all these things, right? And we went to a fire conference, and this would have been 2 years ago, about 2 years ago now, a little before this. And while we were there, we heard about this little school in Kansas that would like to be more inclusive, and this program Embrace that was looking for an executive director, um, and do you want to move to Kansas? And I will be honest, we laughed and we laughed. Who moves to Kansas? We're not moving to Kansas. Like, that is crazy talk. And so next thing you know, here we are, we're in Kansas. So executive director of an organization called Embrace. It's very similar to the Fire Foundation for those who are familiar with it. We work to provide resources.
Quick
Yes,
question.
yeah.
I know we use
Yeah.
a lot of acronyms, but for anyone listening who's not heard of either Fire or Embrace, would you break open those acronyms, please?
Yes, yes. So FIRE, I think it's faith, inclusion, religious education is what FIRE stands for, I believe, if I remember that right. But ultimately, and then Embrace is embracing many by reaching all in Catholic education. So is Embrace. So ultimately, the concept being inclusion, the concept being when we educate all of our kiddos alongside each other, everybody benefits. And so what Embrace does is we support resources such as personnel, curriculum, professional development, etc. So for those Catholic schools who choose to include students with disabilities, they aren't doing it on their own. And we try to work with the public systems some as well, but sometimes we're just finding resources and supporters who can help us provide those resources in our Catholic schools.
Okay, very good. So it sounds like that Embrace, I guess this organization that you direct now has grown a lot in recent years, I trust.
Yes. So a fairly new, yes. I believe, if I remember the history, they officially started their nonprofit journey about 7 years ago, started by a group of families who wanted their children to be included, or many of their kiddos were included, but they found that the schools couldn't afford the resources to support their children and fully in the way that they would like to, doing a lot of busing back and forth with public schools. And so they were really seeking of how do we do this. At that point in history, they knew of FIRE, which has been around now for 25 years, but FIRE was not doing affiliates yet. And so Embrace started literally right across the state line about a couple of years before FIRE started having affiliates. So a very similar model to a certain extent, a couple of differences in the specifics of what we support, but very, very similar. And these organizations are all.
Can people reach out nationally? Sorry, I talk on top of you. Can people reach out nationally, or is it more local in your area?
So we spend our funds locally, but we do a lot of advocacy nationally. So we, and a lot of the professional development we do is accessible nationally. So it's a little bit of a mix. But there are organizations like ours that are popping up all over the nation. And there are organizations that have existed for years. So CCSE, which, don't ask me what that stands for, out in the Northeast, they've been around for well over 20 years. Francesca Pellegrino heads that. And St. Louis, there's a group called One Classroom. And I know I missed it. Portland ICE, or it's ICE of Oregon is another organization. So ultimately, most of the time, they're started by families. And sometimes it's families who are looking for their own child to benefit. Sometimes it's families who wish their child had been able to. And so they're creating something to say, no child who wants a Catholic education should ever be told no again. And how do we make sure we support that?
Excellent. Well, it's just so wonderful that, the advancements being made, especially in the Catholic school arena in recent years. It's such a blessing because, again, a Catholic family that, and especially just being family friendly. If you have more than one child, you don't want to split them up in different schools either. It's just not family friendly, let alone
Right.
affirming their family's Catholic identity is so important. So again, this is great news, and organizations like yours are so needed. Thank you. Talk to us a little bit more though about your own family, if you will. And I guess one question, I think a lot of people, that if it's new to them, uh, maybe they've just gotten a diagnosis, maybe they've adopted like yourself, or they've had a child and they're just still grappling with the diagnosis. Uh, what are your words? What are your mother's words or your advocate words to them?
So I'm going to get emotional because I'm a happy crier for those of you who haven't experienced that with me. And I always joke that my cup runneth over with what the opportunity that God has given us to have these kiddos in our life. It's the gift, and it sounds so cliche. I get it. It is the gift that you never knew to ask for. It is a family and a club, if you will, that you never knew you wanted to be a part of. But it really, and again, it sounds so cliche and it sounds so naive to say this, but it is true. The things that my girls have brought, the strength to my faith that my girls have brought, there is nothing else that I can imagine could have done this for me. And my dog is going to bark. Welcome to the pandemic times, right?
Oh, that's okay. All right. But it doesn't sound cliche. It sounds authentic, Jill. It sounds authentic, and not just a mother's heart, a family's heart, all of that. And especially when you have children or a child that has, I'll say different gifts, because like we just said in the prayer, we all have gifts. We all have, limitations too. But some of the gifts, some of the children and adults, even of course with disabilities, bring is their unique view and vantage point on life, and even how they love, which again is only inspiration for us.
Right.
So no, I,
Exactly.
I love I love listening to you, and I'm glad you're a happy crier. But
Well,
nothing wrong with that.
I think it's so often I don't want people to think that my tears are related to sadness or to overwhelm or any of. I mean, I'm overwhelmed, but it's overwhelmed in a way that is um, such an opportunity and such again. It's so hard to express. If you have a new diagnosis or you have the opportunity to bring home a kiddo with a disability and give them a home and give them that place, that is a blessing you will never have imagined until you're in it. So, and I've made so many wonderful friends through this journey from all across the country of whether it be families who are seeking a Catholic education or families who are new into this journey. The joys abound. And it's hard too. There are
And
hard
again, not
moments.
to discount the challenges, right? They're really, but there's challenges raising all people. you know,
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
there's still
Yeah.
similarities.
Yes. I think that part is the part that we often, and again, we don't mean to sound flippant, but I would challenge anyone to show me a child who was easy, of show me a child who was perfect, of and so that the things that we balance and do are not dissimilar from every other family. We have the same hopes and dreams for our kiddos. Now we are so blessed to be in the era we're in because the opportunity for our girls is very similar to their typical peers. Individuals with disabilities are being employed. Individuals with disabilities are going to college. Individuals with disabilities are getting married. So the ability to live a full life is greater in this time than it ever has been in history. And so what an opportunity for us and for them just to grow that and push it. We can't stop. Nobody can sit on their laurels because it is a time when we are pushing for inclusion in every aspect of society for our kiddos.
Absolutely. I always say, we're not where we used to be, but we've still got work to do. We're always going to have work to do. We're not where we want to be yet either, totally. But that's okay. It's a process, but you're right. And the roads that have opened by other families before you, now you enjoy and your children will enjoy. And likewise for those who follow behind you on this bridge, so to speak. So that's a good thing. Now your girls are old enough Can you talk to us a little bit about how is it for the, sibling to sibling? How's the differences you notice there, or how it's going or not going, good and bad days?
So our middle daughter, Sophie, is our typical daughter. And
Mhm.
if there is such a thing, right? We always joke. Many years ago, someone told me normal is a sitting on the dryer, and so there is no such thing as quote quote normal. So we don't talk about that. But typically developing child,
Mhm.
Sophie, and I would say there are times that she is far more challenging than my other kids.
Praise
Of
God.
But also just the heart that that little girl has. We have had those moments when we worry about, have we overburdened her, right? So she's
Mhm.
the middle child with an older sibling with Down syndrome. They have, grown. They're in the same grade in school. They've grown up very close together. She doesn't know a single day of her life without Rayleigh in it, and so that has made her just the most precious heart you've ever seen. But then we adopted another child with Down syndrome. So, we've had those moments where we think, is it fair? Like, did we overburden and over question what her life will be? Because the realities are we aren't going to live forever. And
Mhm.
what does that mean for her and for her future? And then you spend some time with them together, or you hear her talk about how she's not sure she'll ever be able to date unless someone loves her sisters as much as she does. And so I'll sometimes say, you're 11, so let's just slow down.
Slow down.
um,
Well,
but
I'll just
it's
add quickly to that. I've known families where the same type of sibling scenario, where the, again, typical in quotes, child or daughter was much older than yours, let's say 10 years older, and was having those same questions. And my answer is still the same. You're not gonna be attracted to someone who doesn't, in
right.
in one way. Again, and they just wouldn't be the right one. So you don't even have to worry about that. And there's plenty of people out there that have the heart for this ministry, I say, or just loving other people unconditionally. Sure. So,
Exactly, exactly,
but
exactly.
it's a
And
it's a it's an understandable thought process, of
right.
course.
Right. Well, and it's also just the importance of, why we focus so much on preparing our girls for independence and giving them those opportunities to think about life after, pre-K through 12 or 22, as you will. And, thinking about what does that look like in employment opportunities and schooling opportunities and living independently and all of those things that we've had to think about from day 3. My oldest daughter started occupational therapy on day 3 of her life.
Mhm.
And and that's such a blessing in so many ways, because we were we learned very quickly that everything we do today is about tomorrow. And
Mhm.
we may kind of say that for our typical kiddos and as typical families, but we don't really think about every single move. Um, but I think about the way I teach them to make soup today has to be about the way they will make soup someday in their own apartment. And
Absolutely.
so thinking about what tools do we use and what tools will be safe and what tools will be correct, and how we teach patterns and we teach understanding and those things that go along. And so, those are the things that I think are probably different for our family versus another family, is that we just have to think 2 decades ahead, whereas some may have the luxury of not quite the 2 decades ahead is, will they be a basketball star, versus our 2 decades ahead are, how do we appropriately teach them to make soup.
Right.
So
Well, they're like you're teaching life skills much more, I guess, with much greater intentionality than
yes,
others may have to even or do. But that
right.
future thinking is very helpful too, because I think it makes you also much more conscientious all the time in your decisions and in your teaching about, I want to create an independent person.
Right.
So you
Absolutely.
probably do much less spoon feeding than someone else may,
Right.
which
Right.
also I think is for the good.
It
As a
is.
parent
It is.
or an educator, you always want the person you're training up to be independent, not dependent, of course.
Absolutely. We use this app called Map Habit to teach skills and to teach. It basically takes the visual schedule and puts it on. You know, engineering power of today's technology. And we use that to teach a lot of different skills. And so recently we were working on laundry, and one of my friends who has a typical son who's in his early 20s asked how she could get a hold of the application for him. So it was that wonderful reminder, right? That, the skills we're teaching are skills we all have to build and skills we all need. And so that piece, it made me feel pretty good. I'm not gonna
as you should. I love that. How about let's think of a few other questions here. We talked a little about the siblings and a little bit about, well, what about the Catholic schools? Let's focus a little bit on those Catholic schools that are doing much, more inclusion now than ever before, thank God. But what do you say to them, or what do you say to some that maybe haven't had as much formation, maybe are still a little more leery or even resistant? What are your words of wisdom and encouragement for them?
I think the biggest thing that I point to is faith, right? So this is what we do. We walk in faith every day. We are building saints. We are building schools that should look like the kingdom of heaven. And if they don't, what are we missing? And so I think it's really that thing to say, what are we missing? And what can we bring to the lives of all of our other kiddos? Oftentimes I think we become so focused on whether we can serve that child, whether we can do perfectly for that child. And sometimes it's not just about that child. I would argue all day long that my girls' greatest benefit to this world is to their typical peers. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity, I think that's the other part, is just the opportunity you're missing if you're missing out on time and life and experiencing these kiddos. I have yet to have a teacher who worked with these kiddos for all different disabilities, who actually engaged, who chose to see the good, to see the power, and have the faith, and I'm gonna learn. And I think letting go of it being perfect, there is no such thing. I would ask every teacher out there, have you ever taught a lesson? And you had a new lesson plan, you went out to that lesson, and it just went swimmingly. It was so perfect, you just couldn't believe it. Not likely. That doesn't exist, right? So why do we expect that of teaching kids with disabilities? It's just not a realistic expectation. So we're learning every day as educators with all of the students. So let's not be stifled by a child who comes in with a diagnosis. Let yourself have that opportunity. That's the biggest thing. Let yourself have that opportunity and walk in faith.
Exactly. Let God surprise you. And I would say presume competence,
Yes. Presume competence. Yourself too. Because I think so
not
often,
perfection, but not perfection. Right.
Exactly. Like I think so often, that we say presume competence in our kiddos with disabilities, but also presume competence in yourself. You are a far better teacher than you think you are. I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
And parents. I think parents need to hear that as well. Especially coming out of the pandemic when they were really stressed, beyond measure, so to speak. Educators too, of course.
Yes.
Everybody needs to,
pat
themselves on the back and.
Exactly. Well, and I think this feeling of what's been lost, or that we can't keep going, or whatever it might be. When we talk about we've been working since day 3, if you haven't been working since day 3, it is not too late. It is never too late. So it is presume that competence. Know that our kids are resilient and powerful and hold so many more keys to what's important in life than we do. All the rest of us, a whole lot.
I'll lead them. And I totally agree with that. They are the models and inspiration, like I said, for us if we slow down long enough to pay attention.
Absolutely. Right. That's the key.
Well, any other kind of closing thoughts or remarks regarding just more that, even faith communities can do as well as schools, or what's next steps do you imagine in your perfect envisioning of where we go next with Catholic schools and inclusion?
we talk so much about inclusion. We talk so much about awareness and acceptance. And as we, roll from, Disabilities Awareness Month right now into, Autism Acceptance Month. And I think that's a really important, those with autism have asked us to stop saying awareness and say acceptance. And really what we're all moving towards is inclusion and belonging and being a part of each other's community. And so I think when people look around and say, well, what can I do? And I say, start with saying hi. Say hi. Start
Build a
there.
relationship. Yeah.
Build a relationship. Say hi. Say, how are you? Sit next to somebody. I know right now we're COVID times, right? So sitting next to someone.
6 feet.
So, but just not forgetting that human connection, that everybody wants that in their own way. And, finding the way to connect and find the way that someone can be a part of the community with you.
I love that. Jill, you've been a delight to have on. I'm so very glad. Thank you for taking the time for us today.
Thank you very much. I thank you for all that you guys are doing, and please let us know any way we can help.
Yeah. Jill, do you have a website or contact information, anything you'd like to share to anyone listening now, or if they listen to it later, because it'll be recorded and posted on our website later?
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to reach out. We're embraceks.org is our website. But find us, find us on Facebook. It's Jill Reffitt. Find Embrace on Facebook. We love to connect with families. We love to connect with those who want to champion inclusion and people with disabilities. So connect. Let's build community.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you. Again, it's embraceks.org, correct?
Perfect.
That's the website.
Yes.
You can get a hold of Jill and talk to her further. And of course, obviously, NCPD is available as well. If we can help you, please get in touch with either one of us. Thank you, Jill, so much. God bless you.
Thank you, Charlene. You guys too. God bless.
Next visit.
Yes. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I was like,